870 million people in the world suffer from hunger. 1.2 billion live in conditions of extreme poverty. 67 million don't have access, 67 million are unemployed. 748 million do not have access to safe drinking water. And 1.3 billion do not have access to electricity. To all of this, we can add the increasing environmental degradation. For example, over the last decade, global CO2 emissions have increased by 46%. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, I'm telling you all of this because today I want to invite you to help reduce these numbers. And how are we going to do that? Of course, there are many, many ways to do it. But today I want to invite you to help heal the world through innovation, and more specifically, through social innovation. So what do I mean by social innovation? Well, scholars define it as a novel solution to a social problem that is more effective, more efficient, sustainable, or just than existing solutions, and for which the value that you generate accrues to society as a whole, rather than to private individuals. So you're starting to see the connection, right? By developing social innovations, we can help the world, we can reduce the numbers I just showed you, and along the way, we help society as a whole, which means we're helping ourselves too. So I like to emphasize the word solution in the definition I just gave you for social innovation, because social innovations as solutions can come in different flavors. They can be products, technologies, production processes, principles, ideas, legislation. But the most successful ones are those that combine different elements. So now I want to show you a couple of examples of social innovations. These are solutions to social problems, except that one of these that I'm going to show you was not as sustainable as it should have been. This is the play pump. It is a playground merry-go-round that pumps water to an elevated water tank. It was developed in the 1990s and commercialized in South Africa to help alleviate the problem of water scarcity in the region. So in these regions in Africa, many people have to walk miles and miles every day just to get water. In other villages, they have traditional hand pumps that are really labor-intensive, and these tasks are often relegated to women and girls. So this play pump was supposed to solve 3 problems at once. 1, women having to work so hard to pump water every day. 2, girls staying out of school to help their mothers get water. And 3, children having no playground. So this is how the technology works. When the merry-go-round spins, when the children are playing, the water is pumped to the elevated water tank where it's stored. In this way, villagers have water on demand by simply pulling a lever. Now, to cover the cost of maintenance, you see the elevated water tank has a billboard. And the idea was to sell advertising to local companies to help pay for that maintenance cost. All right, so our next example, it's a mini power plant developed by Husk Power Systems in India. This plant converts agricultural waste, like rice husk, corn cobs, and wood chips, into electricity. The electricity is then distributed through a mini grid that is also made from sustainable materials, such as bamboo. Husk Power Systems also developed their own prepaid meters. With these prepaid meters, they can sell electricity like mobile phone talk times. So people just put the money they have, and when the credit is depleted, they shut down the supply of electricity. And just as the play pump, this technology was supposed to solve a number of problems. So first, it is estimated that about 400 million people in India don't have access to electricity. So this technology provided them with affordable access. Second, it reduced the use of the usual fuel sources like kerosene, diesel, and wood. The use of this type of fuel, causes a lot of indoor air pollution. And this air pollution is responsible for a lot of premature deaths in India. And lastly, it helped farmers manage waste. So which one do you think was not sustainable? The play pump? The horsepower systems? Well, let's see. So after 6 years of operating, horsepower systems has installed over 80 power plants around India. It's actually powering over 350 villages. They also expanded to other countries, such as Nepal, Uganda, and Tanzania, and they continue to grow. So I would venture to call this a sustainable solution, right? Okay, so sadly, the play pump did not fare as well. By 2007, most of the play pumps were abandoned. So this was due mostly to maintenance problems. They simply broke. Also, it wasn't a well-accepted solution, since when children's playtime wasn't enough to pump water for the whole village, women had to operate this play pump, which resulted more difficult for them than using the traditional hand pump. As you can see in this picture, there's no advertising. So they had trouble actually selling the advertising, and they couldn't pay for the maintenance. So what went wrong with this technology? All right, so the technology had a few problems, but the most problems came from the way the technology was deployed. As I told you at the beginning, social innovation is a solution. It's not only a technology or a product. And as a solution, you need two things. You need to develop an appropriate technology and couple that technology with a sustainable business model. So an appropriate technology is a technology that takes into account the culture, the economy, the environment, of the place where you are going to implement your technology. And you have to make sure that your business model will allow you to deliver the benefits of your technology for as long as it is necessary. According to the National Center for Appropriate Technology, appropriate technologies must be simple to implement. They must be not capital intensive and not energy intensive, meaning that very little non-renewable energy has to be used to build and to maintain them. They should also use local resources and local labor. And finally, they have to nurture the environment and human health. So now, the play pump did have some of these characteristics, right? It was a simple technology, didn't use non-renewable energy, it helped protect human health, but it was somewhat capital intensive. Installing one of these pumps was $14,000, which was a lot of money for the African region. And it was also enough to install a good number of the traditional hand pumps. In terms of local resources and labor, they did use local resources to build these play pumps, to install them. But in terms of local resources, at least in South Africa, they did use local resources. But when they expanded to other countries, they didn't. They kept bringing parts from South Africa. This also became a maintenance nightmare, because if you were in Zambia or Mozambique, you will have to wait for months to get your replacement parts. So we're starting to see where the problem was, right? In contrast, horsepower systems had all of these elements. It was an affordable technology, very simple, and it protected human health, and they did use local resources and local labor to build it and maintain it. But that was not the only problem. The play pump also lacked a sustainable business model. Okay, remember that these technologies are deployed through organizations. And every organization, whether it's a for-profit, a non-profit, or a governmental organization, needs a business model that explains how you're going to create, deliver, and appropriate value. So your business model must answer questions such as, how do we create value? And who do we create value for? And when you're addressing social problems, you have to create value not only for customers, but also for your beneficiaries. And sometimes these could be the same people, or not. So the play pump, their beneficiaries were the African villagers. They benefited from the technology, but they did not have to pay for it. The actual customers was the donors and the government that paid to have these play pumps installed. In the case of horsepower systems, the beneficiaries were the same people as the customers. The people who were receiving the electricity were paying a modest fee to get the electricity. Now, a sustainable business model also answers questions such as, how do we ensure that beneficiaries will adopt our solution? Remember that when you are addressing social problems, your biggest competition may come from the status quo, like the African villagers that demanded to have their hand pumps back because they really did not like the play pump. And finally, the business model must answer the million-dollar question. How do we make money? Even if you're just trying to help and you're not seeking to make a profit, you still need to ensure that you have a reliable source of capital coming in so you can deliver your solution and the benefits for as long as is necessary. The play pump had some revenue streams. They relied on donations mainly to install the pumps, and they relied on advertising on the billboards for maintenance. As we saw, this last one was not really a reliable source of money because all those billboards went unsold. In contrast, Husk Power Systems had 3 reliable sources of income, and they are currently seeking more. The first one was they charged for the electricity to their beneficiaries, and they had a model that was culturally appropriate, and it was appropriate to the economic situation of the beneficiaries. Their second revenue stream came from biochar, which was the waste product from the gasification process. So instead of wasting that, they will hire women from the local villages to produce and sell incense sticks that you can make from this material. And lastly, they made money from carbon offsets because this technology reduced the need for kerosene and diesel. It will save the world about 150 tons per year per plant of CO2 emissions. So these could be monetized to certified emission reductions. So we can see the difference in the 2 models. Lastly, a sustainable business model that is geared towards a social cause must also ensure that your social value is being generated for everybody, for all the stakeholders involved, including society as a whole and the environment. And this is how Husk Power System does it. By having one plant, one of the mini plants, they help the environment by reducing CO2 emissions. They power entire villages with electricity, and they save money to the people in the villages because this electricity is more affordable than kerosene and diesel, which is what they tend to use. It also protects human health, and it helps create jobs for the people there. So, when you're designing your social innovations, keep the 2 components in mind. Have an appropriate technology and a sustainable business model. Okay? So now let's suppose you're ready to help heal the world through social innovation. Does this mean you have to go to a faraway country to do it? No, not at all. Oh, here, in Worcester County, with a population of over 800,000 people, over 90,000 people live at or below the poverty line. Over 80,000 people do not know where their next meal will come from. There are about 39,000 people who are unemployed, and 1,500 people do not have a place to live. They are homeless. Lastly, Worcester County consistently earns an ozone grade of F, which means we have really poor air quality. So what are we going to do about it? Thank you.